Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Joanne Smedley, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Navy is Lieutenant Anthony Martin. We warmly welcome the family of Private Leslie Arthur Parker, whose story will be told shortly. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria and RSL Queensland who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During the ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by family, visitors and students on behalf of Bunbury Cathedral Grammar School, Primary Department, East Bunbury from Western Australia, and from Queensland, King's Christian College, Reedy Creek, and King's Christian College, Pimpama. Please stand and join in the singing of the National Anthem. Children, please be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Private Leslie Parker. Known to friends and family as Les, Leslie Arthur Parker was born on the 26th of April 1916 in Cottesloe, Western Australia, to Arthur and Lucy Parker. Leslie attended Cottesloe Primary School and Fremantle Boys High School. He was a keen sportsman with an interest in cricket, golf and cycling. Following his education, he went on to work as a miner in Bullfinch and Kalgoorlie. On the 18th of June 1941, Leslie Parker enlisted in the 2nd Australian Imperial Force at Claremont. After his initial training, he spent a week of pre-embarkation leave with his wife Margaret and his baby daughter Jean, who was not yet 8 months old. On the 7th of November 1941, Parker left Fremantle with a US convoy bound for the Middle East. More training followed until late May 1942, when Private Parker was taken on strength of the 2nd 32nd Battalion. In July 1942, the war in North Africa had become critical. Germans and Italians had reached El Alamein in Egypt, about 110 kilometres from Alexandria. The 9th Division, of which the 2nd 32nd Battalion was part of, was rushed to this area. The battalion's first attack began on the 17th of July. The 2nd 32nd captured its first objective, but the Germans resisted fiercely and counter-attacked with tanks. The battalion suffered heavily. Nearly half its number were killed or wounded, and nearly 200 became prisoners of war. Initially reported as missing, Parker's status as prisoner of war was confirmed a few months later. In April 1943, he was reported as being in a prisoner of war camp. In late 1943, Parker escaped from a work camp on a farm located on the Piedmont Plain between Turin and Milan in 1944. He and his mate, Ken Scott, along with 2 others from the 2nd 32nd, joined a small team of Australians working with Italian partisans in northern Italy. Private Ian Sproul, a member of the group, later recounted, "Les Parker, the only married man amongst us, and several years our senior, looked after all of us. He was a top soldier, as I guess a whole bunch of us were. But Les gave the impression of reliability. He had a clear, direct gaze and a wide, firm mouth. He cared about people, a terrific mate, and he was solidly built and solid in character." On one occasion, Parker distinguished himself during an attack on a German convoy, waiting until a vehicle was only a few feet away before throwing a bomb that blew it up. Parker had been with the group for almost a year when in August he and 4 other Australians took part in a raid on a village of Lilians, about 30 Italian communist partisans. During the fighting, Parker was wounded by a mortar bomb and Private Sproul was with him and managed to get him to safety. Parker was taken to a makeshift stretcher to Razzo, where he was hidden in a church tower and placed under the care of an Italian doctor. But his wounds proved too severe and he died on the afternoon of the 13th of August 1944. Parker was buried at midnight so as not to attract attention in the family vault of a local man. A group of escaped Australian and New Zealand prisoners attended the funeral, and after the war his remains were moved to Milan War Cemetery. Leslie Parker was 28 years old. Following his death, Parker was mentioned in dispatches in recognition of gallant and distinguished service in the field. His name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my left, among 40,000 Australians who died while serving in the Second World War. His photograph is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private Leslie Parker, who gave his life for Australia, for our freedoms and in the hope of a better world.
Children, please stand.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub at Gallipoli with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. Thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial and good evening.